The rehearsal was called for 10 in the morning, and Sarah Calloway was not there. This was the third time. Tina noticed the empty chair at the back of the vocal line the way she noticed most things, immediately, without making a production of it, filing the information for later. She was 34 years old, and she was in the middle of building something that she had been building for years in smaller rooms, and was now finally building in the right room. And the thing she was building required precision and commitment from everyone around her. Not because she demanded it for its own sake, but because the work demanded it. And the work was the thing that mattered. She ran the rehearsal without Sarah. The band was tight. The other vocalists knew their parts. The arrangements that had been worked on for weeks were beginning to sound the way she heard them in her head, which was the specific satisfaction of a rehearsal going the way rehearsals should go when everyone is present and paying attention. She moved through the set with the focused efficiency of someone who has been performing since she was 19 years old and knows exactly what a song needs and exactly how to get it there. But the empty chair was in her peripheral vision the entire time. Sarah Calloway arrived at 11:15. She came through the side door of the rehearsal space, a large room in a building in Los Angeles that smelled of industrial carpet and old coffee, with the specific energy of someone who has been running and has not stopped running and is now trying to appear as though she has not been running. Her hair was pulled back unevenly, strands loose at the sides. She was wearing a white t-shirt that had seen better days, washed soft and slightly misshapen at the collar, tucked partially into black trousers. Black cowboy boots, scuffed at the toes in the way of boots worn every day because they are the right boots for every day. She had a canvas bag over one shoulder and a coffee cup in the other hand, the cup nearly empty, held with the grip of someone who has been awake longer than they should have been. And she was slightly out of breath, and her eyes went immediately to the back of the room where Tina was standing. Tina was looking at her. Sarah took her place in the vocal line without speaking. She set her bag down quietly, found her position, and nodded at the musician nearest to her as though arriving 75 minutes late to a rehearsal was a thing that required no comment. She was 24 years old, and she was new to this level of production, and she was, Tina could see clearly from across the room, frightened. Tina let the rehearsal continue for another 40 minutes. She watched Sarah work. The girl could sing. That had never been in question, had not been in question from the first audition, when Sarah had walked into a room full of people auditioning for the same position and had opened her mouth and produced a sound that made the musicians stop what they were doing and pay attention. The voice was there. It had always been there. What had also been there from the beginning was something unformed about the way she carried herself, a rawness, a reaching quality, as though she was still in the early stages of understanding what she had and what to do with it. Tina had seen this before. She had, in certain respects, been this before. When the rehearsal broke for lunch, Tina asked Sarah to stay. The room emptied. The musicians packed up and left with the cheerful efficiency of people who have been given an hour and intend to use it fully. The other vocalists filed out with the careful avoidance of people who sense that something is about to happen in a room and prefer not to be present for it. Within 5 minutes, Tina and Sarah were alone in the large rehearsal space with the industrial carpet and the old coffee smell, and the empty chairs in a row, and the afternoon light coming through the high windows at a low angle. Sarah stood near the vocal line, her canvas bag still over her shoulder, waiting. Tina sat down on the edge of the rehearsal stage and looked at her. She did not speak immediately. She had learned, over many years of being in rooms where difficult things needed to be said, that the impulse to fill silence with words was usually the wrong impulse, and that silence, given enough room, often did more useful work than sentences. She said, eventually, "This is the third time." Sarah said nothing. Tina said, "The first time I thought you had a reason. The second time I thought maybe the first time was the reason, and you hadn't sorted it out yet. This is the third time, Sarah, and I need you to tell me what's happening." Sarah looked at the floor. She was 24 years old, and she was standing in front of Tina Turner in a rehearsal room in Los Angeles. And she had been late 3 times, and she had been waiting for this conversation with the specific dread of someone who knows a thing is coming and cannot find a way to make it not come. She said, "I'm sorry." Tina said, I know you're sorry. That's not what I asked." The silence came back. Outside the building, a truck went past on the street. The afternoon light shifted slightly through the high windows. Sarah Calloway stood with her canvas bag on her shoulder and her scuffed black boots on the industrial carpet, and she looked at the floor for a long moment, and then she looked up, and she said the thing she had been trying not to say. Her mother was sick. The word she used was sick, and the way she said it made clear that sick was doing the work of a larger word that she was not ready to say out loud in front of someone she was trying to impress. She said her mother was receiving treatment at Cedars-Sinai, which was on the other side of the city from the rehearsal space, and that she drove her mother there every morning because her mother could not drive herself anymore and because there was no one else to do it. She said the treatment took approximately an hour and that she had been trying to calculate every morning whether she could get her mother to the hospital and get across the city to the rehearsal space in time, and that 3 times she had calculated wrong. She said she had not told anyone because she was new, and she was the least experienced person in the production, and she had been afraid that if she said she needed to arrive late every morning, she would lose the job. And she needed the job, and she could not afford to lose the income. And so she had said nothing, and had hoped she could make the math work, and 3 times the math had not worked. She stopped talking. The room was very quiet. Tina looked at her for a long moment. She thought about a rehearsal room not unlike this one, in a different decade, in a different city, when she had been the person standing in the wrong place at the wrong time, with a reason she was afraid to give, because giving the reason meant exposing the situation, and exposing the situation meant risking the things she could not afford to risk. The arithmetic of silence. She knew it precisely, had lived inside it for years. The daily calculation of what it cost to say the true thing versus what it cost to swallow it. And the discovery, made slowly and expensively over many years, that swallowing the true thing does not make it disappear. It accumulates. It compounds. It becomes, eventually, exactly what Sarah Calloway was standing in front of her with right now. 3 missed rehearsals and a face that had been holding something too large for too long. She thought about what it had felt like to calculate, every day, the cost of honesty against the cost of silence, and to choose silence because silence felt safer, and to discover, repeatedly, that silence had its own costs that were not always visible until they had already been paid. She thought about her mother. Her own mother had left when Tina was young, and the leaving had been a wound that had never entirely closed, and the specific texture of that wound was the knowledge of what it meant to need something from a parent and not have it available. Sarah Calloway drove her sick mother to Cedars-Sinai every morning and calculated the math on the other side of the city, and had been afraid to say so. Tina sat on the edge of the rehearsal stage and felt the full weight of that land on her in the particular way that things land when they connect to something you have been carrying for a long time. She said, "Why didn't you tell me?" Sarah said, "I was afraid you'd let me go." Tina said, "And instead, I'm finding out because you were late 3 times, which is worse." Sarah said, "Yes." Tina was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Look at me." Sarah looked at her. Tina said, "I'm not letting you go. Do you understand that? I'm not letting you go." Sarah's face did something complicated. The composure she had been holding since she walked through the side door, the running but not running composure, the "I'm fine, nothing is wrong" composure, moved, shifted, came slightly undone at the edges, the way composure does when the thing you have been bracing against turns out not to be the thing that happens. Tina said, "Here is what we're going to do. You're going to tell me what time your mother's treatment finishes every morning. We'll adjust your call time. No one needs to know why. Call times get adjusted for all kinds of reasons, and this is one of them. You come when you can come, and you are here fully when you are here, and that is what I need from you." Sarah said, "I can't ask you to do that." Tina said, "You're not asking. I'm telling you." There was a pause. Tina said, "And there is something else." She reached for the bag she had set beside her on the rehearsal stage, and she took a moment with it, unhurried, the way she did most things. She took out a piece of paper, not cash, not a sealed envelope with the performed generosity of a formal gift, but a plain piece of paper with a name and a phone number written on it in her handwriting, clear and direct, and she held it out to Sarah. She said, "This is my business manager. His name is at the top. You're going to call him this week, not next week, and you're going to tell him I sent you. He's going to set up a payment to help cover whatever your mother's treatment is costing you that insurance isn't covering. Before you say a single word about it, this is not a loan. It is not charity. It is not something that comes with conditions or expectations or a conversation you owe me later. You are doing good work. You are in a situation you did not create, and I am in a position to help with it. That is the entire transaction. That's all this is. Sarah Calloway stood in the rehearsal room in Los Angeles with her canvas bag on her shoulder and her scuffed black boots on the industrial carpet, and she looked at the piece of paper in Tina's hand, and she did not move for a moment. Then she took it. She said, "I don't know what to say." Tina said, "You don't have to say anything. Just be here tomorrow. On time, or as close to on time as the morning allows." Sarah nodded. She looked like she was trying very hard not to cry, which was a look Tina recognized because she had worn it herself in rooms not unlike this one, in years when crying felt like a luxury she could not afford. Tina stood up from the edge of the rehearsal stage. She picked up her bag. She said, "Your voice is extraordinary, Sarah. You know that, don't you?" Sarah said, "I'm still learning." Tina said, "We're all still learning. That's not the same as not knowing." She walked toward the door. Then she stopped, without turning around, the way she stopped when there was one more thing that needed to be said. She said, "And next time, whatever the next time is, whatever the reason is, you tell me. You come to me directly and you tell me the truth. I can work with the truth. I cannot work with silence that turns into 3 missed rehearsals. Understand?" Sarah said, "Yes." Tina said, "Good." She went through the door and into the hallway beyond, and the door swung closed behind her. Sarah stood in the empty rehearsal room for a moment. The industrial carpet, the old coffee smell, the afternoon light through the high windows. The piece of paper in her hand with the name and the number written in someone else's handwriting. The empty chairs in a row where an hour ago 11 people had been singing. She sat down in one of the chairs, and she stayed there for a little while. The industrial carpet, the old coffee smell, the afternoon light through the high windows, moving slowly the way afternoon light moves. The empty chairs in a row where 11 people had been standing an hour ago, filling the room with sound, and now nothing. Just her and the quiet and the thing that had just happened. She had walked into this room this morning expecting to be fired. She had been late 3 times, and she had known with the specific certainty of someone who has been counting that the 3rd time was the time the conversation would happen. And she had prepared herself for the conversation in the way you prepare yourself for something you cannot prevent. By deciding in advance to accept it without falling apart. By rehearsing the graceful exit. By telling herself that she would find another way, because there had always been another way, even when there didn't appear to be one. The conversation had happened. It had not been the conversation she prepared for. She looked at the piece of paper. She thought about her mother in a hospital bed on the other side of the city, and the drive every morning, and the calculations. She thought about the 3 rehearsals, and the empty chair, and the fear that had kept her silent, and the way that fear had compounded each morning until it was larger than the original problem. She thought about what Tina had said. "I can work with the truth." And she thought about what it would have cost her if she had said the truth 3 weeks ago instead of today. About the 3 weeks she had spent calculating and worrying and arriving late and sitting in the vocal line trying to look like someone who had not just driven across the city from a hospital. About the energy she had spent on the secret that could have gone into the work. About the simple, terrifying act of saying the true thing to someone who has the power to use it against you. And the possibility, which she had not fully believed in until today, that the true thing said to the right person at the right moment does not always cost what you think it will cost. Sometimes it costs nothing. Sometimes the person on the other side of the truth has been in a room like this one before, in a different decade and a different city, and knows what the calculation feels like from the inside, and has decided, not out of sentimentality, but out of the hard-won knowledge of what silence costs, to make it easier than it was made for them. Then she put the piece of paper carefully in the inside pocket of her canvas bag, the pocket with the zipper, the one she used for things she did not want to lose. She stood up, straightened her white t-shirt, picked up her bag, and walked toward the door. Tomorrow, she would be on time, or as close to on time as the morning allowed. She would stand in the vocal line, and she would sing the way she could sing when she was not spending half her energy on the weight of a secret. She would do the work that the work required, and before she came to the rehearsal, she would drive her mother to Cedars-Sinai, and she would sit in the waiting room for the hour the treatment took, and she would not calculate the math, because the math had been taken care of by a woman who had once, in a different decade and a different city, also stood in a room and been afraid to tell the truth. Now, before you go, we want to ask you something. If you were in Sarah's position, would you have told the truth from the beginning? And if you were Tina, if you heard this story from someone in your team, what would you have done? Tell us in the comments, because sometimes the most important conversations happen not on the stage, but in the quiet rooms after everyone else is gone. Subscribe for more stories like this one, and hit the notification bell so you never miss one of them.